Hello. Finally making a video. I watched a documentary film by Werner Herzog, German documentary filmmaker and also actual movie filmmaker. He made that movie about Kaspar Hauser, for example. It's a real good one. And he has his own view on the world, and I get that impression that he understands the world through religion. And even though he does that, I still find his documentary films and movies very interesting. Well, he is obviously, I consider him an intellectual because he tries to dig deeper into it and he looks at things in an honest way, but the religion shines through here and there, and particularly when he raises the questions of, what is the negative side of the internet, for example. Then the way he put these sequences together also makes me wonder, is he blaming things on the devil? And I left 2 longer comments under that one documentary film. And I explained that it is very dangerous to use the word evil and to blame things on devil or whatever people regard as, this abstraction of negativity, the abstraction of some kind of entity that is negative or dark or something. I really stay away from all of that terminology. So dark also, no, I don't use those kind of words. Okay, I understand where people are coming from. They're trying to label things. They're trying to find words to describe things. They're trying to blame things on things. They want to know, where something comes from, and then but they're very quick to stop at some kind of accusation or in some kind of diffusion or some kind of path drizzling out into nowhere land, okay? Twilight zone of religion, of religious beliefs, So that doesn't explain things to us. That's why I make these videos, because I really want to dig into this. That's my whole life's mission, to dig into the question, what caused something, okay? What is the cause of that, what people call evil, a word I don't use on my own. I'm just talking about people using that word, not using that word. I would never use that word in my own explaining the world in my own vocabulary. It doesn't exist in my vocabulary. Okay, the same with the word naughty. I talked about this many times before. I wrote an article on Facebook which got me hugely under fire in the Free Thinkers United group. I still have to laugh about this today. They think they're Free Thinkers United. Yeah, the group consists of 80% Muslims, which are not free thinkers at all. Not at all, right? And then some German pushover people in there that think they need to help them so that they can help them troll. Because we Germans, we want to be fair, right? Wrong. Yeah. I'm not going to be fair to total corruption, right? No, because then I'm not fair anymore. I hope that makes a lot of sense. So whenever I wrote an article, that wasn't seen as fair by anyone. But it was food for thought, and the garlic of truth that always burns and sizzles, on the wound. And it's good sizzling because it helps to heal things, yeah. The ego sizzles, but keep in mind that the ego is not looking out for you or the world to become healthy. Okay, the ego likes the junk food of psychology. Okay, the ego likes to binge on psychological junk and head games and twisting things and lying and deceiving. Okay? That's what the ego lives on, feeds on. Now, the ego can become again this, and I see some people do it. The ego did it. The devil did it. No, okay, it's a mistake again. Yeah. What is the ego? Let's dig into this. What is the ego? What is that? Or, what is bad behavior? Where's that? Where are all these patterns coming from in people? Behavior patterns of deceiving, and it's always about deception. The ego is in a state of illusion. But what is the ego? That's an abstraction by itself. Just like what people call devil, those are abstractions, and they don't really exist. Those are the brain. The human brain created this idea of evil. The human brain wants to blame things on other things. The human brain wants to always demonize, depersonalize. They have this word scapegoating. I don't like that word because, and that makes explaining things so much more difficult, because I can't use I can't use a whole chunk of the human vocabulary, neither in German nor in English. In German it's even worse. It's just convoluted with those kind of things. Oh man, that's so bad. It's sexist. It's so bad. People need to become aware about all of this. Stay away from German jokes. Really seriously, they are so sexist. They are so off. So I pay attention to all of that kind of stuff. Scapegoat. So I want to get a different word for that. I don't like that scapegoat. That's speciesist. It just gives people wrong ideas. But it comes from animal abuse, those kind of words. So horrible. So I'll use the word like blame shifting. Blame shifting onto someone that a person has labeled bad or devil, or someone has depersonalized into something that they don't view as an equal. Okay, this is very dangerous. Okay, look at the Phillips and Bardo experiments at Stanford University. The Stanford prison experiment, look it up. I talked about this before in my videos. Dangerous, dangerous psychology. Okay, they had to break up that experiment, and it was his girlfriend who urged him, threatened to abandon him for good if he doesn't break up that experiment and let people go home, let people go to psychiatrists and psychologists to repair themselves from the injury that they have experienced during that experiment. Psychological, it's all psychological, but people became physical in that experiment. Okay? That doesn't trail very far behind. Okay, same with the Guantanamo Bay prison, which was an actual situation, but the same outcome. So whether it's an experiment or an actual war type of situation, scenario, so the same mechanisms were playing into it. And then other people will view this and they don't feel like they have anything to do with that. They feel someone from the outside will view this and judge and say, those are evil, those people. And they themselves, they don't understand that they may function exactly the same way if put into the same positions as prison guards, okay, whether it's an experiment or an actual prison where they have POWs. If that outsider judging them for being evil had been employed in this very same situation as a prison guard, and if they had been indoctrinated with the belief that that prisoner is dehumanized or bad or demon or whatever, then they depersonalize that person. They might depersonalize the depersonalizer if they look at this something like Guantanamo Bay or the Stanford prison experiment from outside. They will label the depersonalizer as evil, not knowing that they themselves would act exactly the same way. So they depersonalize the depersonalizer because they don't understand the psychology, the biological mechanisms that are happening in people's brains. And I'm trying to dig deep into this, okay? I want to get into this. I want to get to the core of the causality. I am not okay with saying they're no damn good. That's the same as saying, oh, they're bad, they're devils, they're demons. And then we can close the file and we can feel good about ourselves. I am not like that. No, we don't even know how we would function in a situation. Maybe the situation is colored differently. Maybe the perpetrator is a depersonalizer. Maybe the perpetrator is someone who has raped us, okay? So we're coming from we got some shit on them, We come from something that we feel we have the legitimate right to judge. But then again, we become the executioner. And then the whole thing loops itself in again and again and again and again and again. Okay, it just keeps looping itself. And that's why the human species cannot figure out a way out of this. Everyone comes up with a new revolution while they're depersonalizing others. And it loops itself again while they're declaring themselves the dictators. and there it loops itself again. Okay, there's always then you just the pattern doesn't change. Okay, that's why we need to look at our own psychology. It starts with every single person. It starts with me. I'm doing this. I'm doing this work because I'm tired of seeing the loops happening in the world. The never-ending loops of blaming other people. Yes, of course, I have to make a judgment on my situation. I'm not going to let a violent, cigarette-smoking, homeless man into my house. Okay, I don't want drama and trouble. I have OCD with that. He might hit me. I have to be judgmental. I might have to be very prejudgmental about certain things. We make experiences. We become prejudgmental. We become prejudiced. Okay, so let's not demonize prejudiced behavior. There's a reason why we become prejudiced. Okay, so obviously, there's always a reason behind it, and we need to understand ourselves better and be more critical in the way we think. We need to question our own resistance to being judgmental. Thou cannot be judgmental, thou will be labeled racist or whatever, or depersonalized. You are no longer among us humans. You, whatever they label you, you racist or whatever. That's not critical thinking. That's looping. That's playing into the loops. The corporate agenda understands that. They use that. They utilize people's fear of being labeled by society. So get out of that fear. Completely abandon the fear of what other people think of you. Completely throw that away. I'm hyper self-critical. I am, I personally, I want to grow. I want to talk better. I don't want to use bad language. I'm very critical of sometimes I throw videos out. I do feel self-conscious, also among other people, of course. But the overall idea of other people judging me on my views or on my appearance also, that I want to throw out. It's completely useless. It's unproductive. It doesn't move us forward in the slightest bit. Okay, if we want to move forward, we have to dissolve that fear of being judged, of being labeled, of being depersonalized by other people or society. When people are about to lose their jobs, that's a little bit more critical because their livelihood depends on it. But if your job and you're standing in society with that job, that we think about it really clearly. If that job of yours that makes you money does hurt others down the line, think about it again. Do you want to stay in that? Okay. So that's a legitimate question to ask. And most people don't put any thought into what their jobs do to the world in terms of hurting other living beings. They're just some kind of marginal players in some kind of conglomeration that makes the world suffer. And they think, oh, I'm just the cook for him, or I'm just the secretary. I'm just the toilet cleaner or whatever, No, whatever you're doing, you're serving this conglomeration that causes suffering. Most people don't even want to know what that corporation does because it's like they feel blessed in ignorance in that way. So they don't want to know. Most people don't even know that there's something to know. And those who suspect something behind it, they'd rather put blinders on. And that all of that makes the world worse. Okay, that's why I say every single person, you and you and you and you and Paul and everyone and myself, we are responsible for this world that we live in. It's not a grandiose statement. Every single person is responsible for the world we live in. Every single person is. Werner Herzog, maybe unknowingly, coming in through the religious door. I don't know how far he's even aware of that fact, that he brings religion into this. When he shows the black hole right after talking about the haters on the internet. One has nothing to do with the other. Okay, so the black holes are this evolution, okay, of matter, of gravitational fields. That's not the devil. It's very important. The sun is not the devil. The sun has solar flares. That's not the devil. We desperately need the sun. And we couldn't live without gravity. Without gravity, we would fall, like Paul told me that several times. He watches documentary film. We talked about that whole night at the other house. Without gravity, if we think about it, your body would fall apart. Your cells things would not be cohesive anymore. It would flock apart. Everything has a gravitational field. Okay, that's what creates biochemistry. That's what creates this body in its cohesiveness. The biochemistry of my cells, okay, that keep this body together in this shape. Okay, without gravitational fields of any sort, then they would, which is of course, this is a very hypothetical thought experiment. We could never even test something like it. Would never work. We could not test this. But don't test it. Don't go into that area where you test it with nuclear power experiments. Not good at all. I watched a movie that had that theme. The movie was the title I Can Still See You. The movie is pretty good. It's pretty interesting, but it lapses back into Hollywood and all of this. So I think it's a Hollywood film also, but it shows what I like about it. It definitely points towards the danger of experimenting with nuclear material, nuclear power and fusion and fission and all of this. So let's not induce some kind of manipulation of molecules, of the nucleus. The nucleus of the matter, okay, deeper than the molecule, the nucleus of every single thing. Okay, so the nucleus is a gravitational field. Okay, so if we get into this idea of removing gravitational field or gravity, the nucleus would fall apart. There would be no more polarity. There would be no more gravitational rotation within chemistry. Okay, so in the macro as in the microcosmos, okay, into eternity. Okay, so you remove this. Paul says it would probably dissolve everything. And this is, it can't. Okay. So, I mean, this is just a thought experiment. It's a completely abstract thought that cannot be put into action because existence is that. It is built on energy and matter. And energy and matter can transform themselves at any time into matter and back into energy. Everything is energy. Okay. Even if there's a gravitational field that will dissolve atoms and the nucleus and those negative swirling particles that are in a centrifuge perpetually around that nucleus. Yeah, so I don't know that much about it. I watch documentary films, and I'm just trying to wrap my head somewhat around this, and just trying to get the idea of existence, basically, and that is what it is, and it's okay. It is what it is, Existence is what it is. There's so many thoughts that are going through my mind at the same time. And in psychology, we need to pay attention to ourselves. We need to look into our own minds, each person for themselves. And you need to understand that your brain creates that ego. The ego is your psychological defense mechanism. And that psychological defense mechanism is a reaction to emotional trauma from the past. So let's not demonize it. It is a function, however, this function stands in your own way later on. It stands in the way because that function is not intelligent. It's not understanding the whole picture of it. It just is in a permanent reactive state to things that it associates stuff with. It's a constant association process. I had a psychotic boyfriend in the past, Norbert. And he told me that when he gets into that state, there's this constant associating. Like it's a fireworks. It's the brain is on fire with associations. And associations that are irrational, that are based on his paranoia. And he says the brain constantly keeps making new associations. Okay. I am always at that verge also, where I can, if I am too overloaded with stress and pain, my brain can go into it. And I know what these fireworks feel like. Okay. It's not fun. I had a bad one in 2012 that lasted me for half a year. I can just say that I am very grateful that I have a very strong prefrontal cortex. I have a lot of knowledge, and I have a passion for learning about psychology. Unlike Norbert, he didn't have that. And I cannot compare him to me. I have no idea what it must be like to be in his brain. Okay. So I'm just saying, with a lot of knowledge, more and more and more knowledge, but not just downloading it. Knowledge, using the knowledge in a connected way, making the right associations, asking questions. That's really the key. When you have knowledge, you need to ask more questions and more questions and more questions. You need to question that knowledge. You need to pick it apart. You need to lay it on the table. You need to look at it. You need to question where this comes from. Where does this come from? Was this proven? Is this an experiment that had been proven, that had been experimented again with the same results? Why were they the same results? Are there any disturbing variables involved in that experiment? Maybe they have overlooked something, some kind of variable that played into it. Maybe they need to repeat all of these questions. We have to become scientists in our existence. That's how serious this is. Okay, if you don't, you become a pawn of those with the biggest greed, and they will use your fear. They will use people like Norbert. They will use his paranoia to make money. That's what they're doing. They don't care if people suffer. They use religion. That's a tool to make people crazy. That's a tool to manipulate people into paranoia, into believing something that the corporate agenda wants them to believe in order to have a specific voting outcome for politics. That's how far it goes. From washing detergents to the food you eat, to not believing the scientists. So that's all corporate agenda manipulation. They can manipulate people to the point where they can make people kill people. We've seen it all already. So let's become really aware about all of this. And become aware of your own ego. Become aware of your own narcissistic repair system. When the ego goes into a frenzy, in narcissists, there are those labels again. I touch these labels with caution. Narcissists, yes, okay, they are narcissistic, of course, yeah. Some are psychopaths. Okay, that's an extreme form of narcissism. Some are borderline. Some are just going against themselves. Many different forms. Okay, but it all comes from childhood trauma and from the genetics that will come out, that will be triggered up into action because of the childhood trauma. And so maybe there are some with the genetical disposition where it doesn't require childhood trauma either. I thought about that too. That could be the case in some cases, right? I mean, there can be very dangerous people out there that have, and that is the thought direction that Paul goes into. So for some people it might not even require a trauma. It's just a genetical disposition. Most scientists don't want to go in that direction just because they're afraid to be labeled and they're afraid to lose their jobs or whatever. They're very liberal in their judgment of genetics versus childhood trauma. So in that percentage ratio. So I think the ratio can vary drastically among different people. So that's, we can't say, oh yeah, it's always 50-50 or it's always 20-80 or something like this. No, obviously not. For some people it is 50-50, for someone else it's 20-80. Yeah. Childhood trauma, 20-80 and 80 genetics, or reversed, or in a different ratio. Everyone is different in that. Maybe there's some kind of statistical mean where most dots fall into, where most people might have the tendency, that the majority of people go into a range, into a statistical mean range in the coordinate system, where they might have somewhat around in that range a ratio of childhood trauma 60% and genetics 40%. This may be the case. So from what I've seen so far, may be the case. That may be the trend, so in general, for the human species. But everyone has a slightly different ratio, and some people fall out of the main stream in the coordinate system and are somewhere in marginal points. Okay, so, but I'm still making a video. I'm thinking right now. Thinking? Paul's looking at me like she stopped talking. So, yeah. We need to look at our own psychological defense mechanism. It's very, very important that we look at that, and that we become aware. Awareness. Okay? Any crazy person can become aware. It will make you less crazy. I guarantee this to you. That is more efficient than any drug out there. Question yourself. Okay? Question that irrational thinking. Question that, and that's what Paul is good at. When I talk to him and I am in a frenzy with irrational thinking, but I'm very grateful that I have this over protector, if I want to call it, over protector of conscious awareness that can actually look at my own craziness in a critical way when I'm in a frenzy. Or I know at the same time when I'm in the frenzy and like doing OCD rituals, whatever, I know that this is OCD ritual. I know it's irrational thinking. Breathing helps, very important. Talking to someone who is more stable than you are. For me, that is Paul. He's more stable. Okay, but he doesn't go far enough in terms of understanding things, digging deeper into it. Okay. So it has plus and minus. There's a stability somewhere in the middle that doesn't allow the deeper digging into it, but on the other hand, it doesn't allow the craziness either. So, and that helps me in discussions, but it bothers me also that he is quick to label and close the door. So let's not stay stuck with labels, because then we go into that's the ego act out. Then we go back into that function of demonization that happens very, very quickly before we even know it. Okay. We label someone That's a narcissist. There, we have already done it. We have demonized, we have depersonalized that person. Okay. Let's look deeper into that person. Okay. We put the label on him. Let's look deeper into him. Okay. Sam Wagner is looking deeper into himself and into psychopath. Okay. This is good. Okay. I want everyone to do that. Every single person. It is my prefrontal cortex and my overprotector, basically, that I have. That saved me from not going down the drain like Norbert did. So, Norbert and his brother, both of them. Their mother was crying to me. What have I done? I felt sorry for her. As much as I was at that time, as much as I was in that mental state of blaming the parents, I would not in that moment say anything to her because I felt her urgency and her pain. Was that when Norbert ended up in the psychiatric ward, in the same one that his brother ended up. So, that's horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I wasn't helping Norbert at all. I was not helping. I was, borderline, and he triggered my pain, which caused me to react, and my childhood trauma of abandonment came up, and all of that. That made him feel more persecuted. Who knows how I made Austin feel? Who knows what I triggered in him? Was my fear of abandonment. That was like, he was like, stay away from me, His childhood trauma was coming up. I don't blame you at all, I mean, I wasn't like psycho, I was just needy, But this neediness can, in some people, trigger all of that up. When they're not aware about their emotional trauma, when they're not aware about their own psychological mechanisms. So that's why it is so infinitely vital that we become fully consciously aware of our own psychology and the mechanisms, so that we don't go into that frenzy that psychopaths are in, where they depersonalize other people, demonize other people, where they feel persecuted by these other people, where they feel stepped on like a rock by other people, and where they then view the other person as an enemy, and then what happens then, the cascade of that, of their behavior from that. They feel like they need to retaliate, and the other person hasn't even done anything wrong, but in their minds they think the other person has somehow tormented them in some way psychologically, when the other person was just being herself, just being herself, living her life, thinking that you didn't like her, so she moves on, talks to someone else. Ooh, that's... And then you think she's playing head games with you. And then this whole thing cascades into more and more. 4. Thank you, Blue God. Blue God is watching out for us. And that becomes psychotic. It becomes very irrational. It becomes dangerous. So let's become aware about our own mechanisms and back away from other people in the way you act out. Stop what you're doing. Stop the retaliation on the internet or whatever, wherever you are. They're not your perpetrators. Okay? They're living their lives, even if they're haters themselves. Leave them alone. You're not helping make it better if you enter into a war. Back away from other people in terms of stopping your act out against other people. This is very, very vitally important information. Okay? Meditate, breathe, go into your own mind. What am I feeling right now? Is it jealousy? Do I feel stepped on? Do I feel like, oh, they're flirting with each other? What if they did this deliberately to hurt me? I gotta back off. Whatever their motives are or whatever, it doesn't matter. I have to back out. I go into my own room, I close the door, I breathe, I meditate on it, I wish them well. That's the practice of Tonglen. Practice it, look it up, Tonglen. What I want, happiness for me, I want wish for other people. Tonglen. Okay. Give happiness to my haters too. Okay. Because as Jesus Christ himself said, they don't know what they're doing, and they really don't. Okay. You guys take care.